Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga. Today is the 29th day of March 2023, and we begin a new chapter, Chapter 4, the sacrifice, the triune path, and the Lord of the sacrifice, with our beloved Ranga. We have read it, and today he'll explain.
The sacrifice, the triune path, and the Lord of the sacrifice. When you are sacrificing, you have to sacrifice to somebody. So that ultimately is the Lord of the sacrifice. But sometimes we are sacrificing to lesser gods, but ultimately it is He who receives everything. If I go to a temple and pray for the divine and I offer some money, it's a sacrifice to lesser gods. Okay? But ultimately He receives everything. So the Lord of the sacrifice is the highest, the supreme. Okay? So, and the triune path is the Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. The path of knowledge, which you pursue through the silencing of the mind and through discrimination, viveka and vichara, by processing the difference between reality and unreality and using your discrimination to know what is true and what is false. That's the path of the Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. The path of love, pursued through the emotional being, it gives you intimacy with the divine and love. May not give you knowledge. It will give you some knowledge, but not the supra-physical knowledge. May not. And Karma Yoga is the working in the physical world and offering all your actions, whether they are mental or vital or physical, to the divine. Constantly remember and offer. Remember and offer. And the word sacrifice is something that we have to discuss a little bit. The word sacrifice is because the word, Sanskrit word in the Gita is yajna. Yajna is normally, when we think of yajna or sacrifice, not in English but in Sanskrit when you say yajna, it is the picture that comes to you is the creation of the sacred fire on an altar, and you recite mantras, and mantras are significant sounds which produce a result in the physical world. They are not just abstract sounds. All sounds don't produce an effect in the physical world. It can produce even chaos. Okay, but there are sounds which have got tremendous power. We know that. For instance, the jets that fly, supersonic jets, can make your window panes crack. We know that. We know also that if I put a glass jar 10 meters away, I can create a sound here which will shatter that glass. So that is the power of sound. But there is also the power of music, which is tremendous. So, and they have tried this out even on plants, on animals, in human beings, even on fetuses. Okay, they have played music and seen the result. There is a reaction even in the fetus when these things are there. So, sacrifice is not the outer physical sacrifice of pouring ghee into fire or even other sacred grasses and all that, like they do in the Vedic ceremonies, but the psychological sacrifice of offering yourself or your thoughts and your emotions and your actions, even your physical properties, whatever you have. You can offer land, you can offer money, you can offer so many things to the divine. People used to offer a lot of food products to Mother. Okay, she used to get a lot of cheese and chocolates, and she used to distribute them back to everybody. People used to send her saris and all that also. Okay, gold ornaments. If you go upstairs, you will see cupboards full of all sorts of valuable ivory. Carvings, beautiful carvings, and it's full. So, and Srirangam used to be offered, at least I remember, beautiful pens with which to write. Okay, And he says in one letter to Amal, it's a beautiful pen, very thin and very fine. And he offered even once a dhoti to him. And Sri Aurobindo said, yes, it's a very fine piece of linen. So it's a very fine. So anything you can offer to the divine. Okay. Of course, you offer yourself fully, that's the best. So sacrifice in that sense. There is another sense that we must avoid in sacrifice. When we speak of sacrifice, we feel that we are giving up something precious to oneself. And there is a sense of loss. However mild it be, but there is a sense of loss. Oh, it was so dear to me, yet I have given it away in a moment of generosity or whatever. So that is not to come in. The real sacrifice is a happy offering of whatever you have. Rather, it should give you joy. So that is the word sacrifice. And it's a very interesting law of sacrifice. And we will read that and try and understand what it is saying.
Before we begin, I want to go back to Jnana Yoga and your statement about discrimination. At what level?
No, at the mental level. When you start, you do it at the mental level. Sri Aurobindo Yoga starts with the Hatha Yoga starts with the Annamaya Purusha. You start with your body. You start clearing up your body and then you purify it in so many different ways. The Jnana Yoga starts with the Pranamaya Purusha, the concept of the self in the emotional part of the being. The others, Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga, they start with the idea of the mind, they silence the mind and use it for discrimination, as I said. But in Sri Aurobindo Yoga, we start not with the body and the vital, but with the Manomaya Purusha, the soul in the mind. It's a psychological method. Sri Aurobindo Yoga does not use any physical methods or like Hatha Yoga or like Pranayama. Neither asanas nor pranayama. You are not forbidden. You are not forbidden not to do. You are allowed if you want. But there are better, subtler ways psychologically. So he doesn't forbid. There are many people who do pranayama. Okay, it helps to purify the vital. Asanas helps to stabilize the body and make it very steady. So all these things are helpful. But Sri Aurobindo Yoga starts from there. So Jnana Yoga starts with the silencing of the mind. You sit for meditation and try to silence the mind. But the silencing of the mind can be done also in many ways. Sri Aurobindo discusses this in the synthesis. One way is Sri Aurobindo's method. He was told by Lele, look at your mind and you will see thoughts coming from outside into your mind. And Sri Aurobindo said, I never knew that thoughts come from outside. But I looked and I found that that's true. So as soon as they came, I started rejecting them before they could enter my mind. And in one day, his mind became silent. He says, like the mountain top, a windless summit of the mountain. Absolute silent peace he achieved. In 3 days, in one day he got the touch. And in 3 days it got stabilized. So that's one way. Rejecting the thoughts. The other way is to separate yourself from the thoughts. Separate yourself from your thoughts. The thinker and the thoughts must become two separate things. Then the thoughts go on mechanically and the thinker rises to the level of the self.
Temi told me that this was her way. That she knew the thoughts were coming through, but she paid no attention to them.
That's right.
There are 3 ways, you said?
Pardon?
Did you say there are 3 ways?
Yeah. Then the other way is, Sri Aurobindo says, you don't silence the mind, but you make it broader and more receptive to everything. Increase. That also is another method, he says. So there are so many methods. But the traditional method is silencing the mind, concentration. And that's very tough, it's difficult. So, now we read so we have explained the sacrifice. It has to be taken in the sense of a offering to the Lord. I read each sentence, we have read it once, so we read each sentence and look at what is being said. The law of sacrifice is a common divine action that was thrown out into the world in its beginning as a symbol of the solidarity of the universe. So, I tell the children always to remember, my students, I always tell them to remember 3 or 4 basic principles which will explain many things. The first is the one becoming the many. This is important, you have to keep in mind. The divine is the only reality before the creation of the world. But he creates the world, one becomes the many. But this is not, the many is not the real many. It's like the kaleidoscope. Okay? It's got a, you know what a kaleidoscope is? It's got, let us say, 6 facets of mirrors. And you put 2 beads into them, and you will see these beads multiplied 6 times. So it is not true that they are 6, but they seem to be 6. So all this, what you see, the solidarity of the universe is only oneness. But you see the many forms, and that is not absolutely true. If you go to another level of consciousness, you see that they are all connected. There is only one truth, and that's the divine presence. Okay? Or I remember another example also, in Pondicherry long ago, on Rue Suffren, there used to be a glass house. We used to call it Kannadi Bangla. It used to be. In the room, all glass all over, different glass mirrors. And if you stood there, you would see yourself reproduced 20 times. That's the nature of the many in the physical world. It's not really true, and yet it's a reflection of that which is true. Okay? So, that's what he's saying here. The law of sacrifice is a common divine action that was thrown out into the world in its beginning as a symbol of the solidarity of the universe. So, although the divine is creating the many, the multiplicity, yet he is ensuring that they are all connected subtly. That's the solidarity is the unity in the physical world, which one can experience when one goes to the self and has a cosmic consciousness. You see that you are one with everybody else. It should not be an intellectual understanding. I understand very well that we have so many people here separately, and our all bodies are separate, seeming separate, but they are all made of matter. So I can understand the oneness of all separate seeming bodies. But it's not that. You have to understand it spiritually, not mentally. So you have to experience them as all one. Okay? So that's the solidarity of the universe. So the many, when it is produced, the ego action starts. That we'll read next. And so to counter the ego action, the solidarity of the universe is created at the background to counter this separative action. I read the next sentence. It is by the attraction of this law that a divinizing principle, a saving power, descends to limit and correct and gradually to eliminate the errors of an egoistic and self-divided creation. In other words, if I were really separate, unconnected with everything else, I can do what I want without any effect. I can do what I want. But there is a connection. So what I do will affect others and there will be a reaction. So I cannot do what I want. I will be conditioned by the response that I get from the universe. So this unity, the law of sacrifice, is the law of unity which counters the egoistic possibilities in the physical world. It counters, the oneness counters the many. That's why it is there at the background. Okay, in the lurking in the background, the law of unity, solidarity. It is by the attraction of this law that a divinizing principle, a saving power, descends to limit and correct and gradually to eliminate the errors of an egoistic and self-divided creation. Note the word gradually. You have to, the evolution climbs slowly, and as it keeps climbing, the ego becomes less and less, and the unity starts increasing more and more. So that's what gradually. This descent, this sacrifice of the Purusha, the divine soul, submitting itself to force and matter so that it may inform and illuminate them, is the seed of redemption of this world of inconscience and ignorance. So, he is now talking of the descent of the Purusha as a sacrifice. The divine, when he creates the world, is limiting himself, because manifestation implies limitation. If there is no limitation, there cannot be a manifestation.
Can we say the Holocaust of the Supreme?
That's right. That's what he refers to, and later on he will tell you that it is more the Holocaust of the Prakriti, the Divine Mother, rather than because she is the one who acts in the physical world. A little more of this is required to understand, because why is it a sacrifice? And why does the manifestation necessarily mean a limitation? A limitation of knowledge, a limitation of power, and a limitation of Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda. It's a limitation. Why? It's easy to understand if you take an image. If I take a lot of gold, okay, I can make ornaments out of them. The ornaments are potentially present in the huge quantity of gold, but I don't see them. They are not manifested. So if I have to manifest a ring, a necklace, an earring, what do? I take a little bit of gold and give it a shape. I am limiting the gold. So manifestation implies limitation. Manifestation implies form, and form implies limitation. So when the divine is manifesting himself in the physical world and creating forms, he limits himself. He limits his consciousness, he limits his power, he limits his Ananda. So this is a sacrifice. He is sacrificing his infinity. He is sacrificing his omnipotence. He is sacrificing his omniscient. And he is sacrificing his bliss.
And if it is a game that he's playing...
It's a game. That's right. So sometimes I used to wonder, he is doing it by himself. So how can you call it a sacrifice? But this is a mental problem which doesn't exist there.
Yeah.
Some of the mental problems that we formulate to ourselves seem very logical. But there's no logic up there. It's a supra-logic. The logic of the infinite, as Sri says. So it is a sacrifice, yet it is purposefully done. Okay? So this is that's what he's saying, the sacrifice of the Purusha. The divine soul submitting itself to force and matter. So force is unconscious and force and matter is Prakriti. Matter and force are Prakriti. By the way, matter and force are really the same thing. Even science admits that matter is energy. Okay. So you have this idea that at the lower level, force and matter are the reality, but consciousness is hiding inside it. At the highest level, consciousness absorbs the force and keeps it. So you have a static condition up. So the principles we were speaking of, the one becomes the many, the formless becomes form, the static becomes the movement here, infinite movement. Okay? So that's he plunges himself into the movement, and in the movement his divine presence is there always, but it is hiding. It's a sacrifice. Now we read further.
But if you would, a little bit about the word inform.
Yeah, that's right. So Sri uses the word inform always, almost always, in the sense of going into the form. Not inform in the sense of information. Nowadays the word information is very bandied about like anything, information technology, IT. Okay, but that's not it. It is going into the form. So the divine creates the forms, but plunges himself into the form and hides himself everywhere. And that consciousness is slowly evolving upwards. So it's a gradual revelation of that which is manifested in the physical world. Okay, so this descent, this sacrifice of the Purusha, the divine soul, submitting itself to force and matter so that it may inform and illuminate them, is the seed of redemption. Because the divine is there in the form, it is possible for it to evolve. If the divine is not there in the form and it is really force and darkness and matter, there can be no evolution. But the evolution is there because it is already there. The plant is there in the seed. If the plant is not there in the seed, it will never manifest. But it has to get the right conditions for manifestation. Okay, so this is what he's saying. Redemption of the world. The word redemption is clear. You get back to what you were. Okay, like you make a deposit in the bank, and at the end of 3 years or whatever term you have put it in, you redeem the capital back. So you get back what you have put in. So that's a redemption. The divine has put himself into the physical world and he gets himself back. He redeems himself. So that's a redemption of this world of inconscience and ignorance. Now he is quoting from the Gita. For with sacrifice as their companion, says the Gita, the All-Father, Prajapati. Prajapati is the word used in the Gita. Prajapati, the All-Father, created these peoples. So, when the divine creates the creatures, he says to them, we'll read the entire thing and then we'll see. The All-Father created these peoples. Okay, it's not there. So, in the Gita it says that by sacrifice, by mutual sacrifice among yourselves and the divine, you can grow. So you can grow by giving yourself. The more you give yourself, the more you will grow. If you don't give yourself, you are static. You are taking everything in, but you are not getting anything. You are being selfish. You are not giving anything to the world. The whole world is built on the principle of exchange. You give and you get. You give and you get. This is something that the Indian merchant class, particularly in Rajasthan and Gujarat, they understand this principle. Okay, and they have even on their monies, the what is it called? The strong box. What is it called? The whatever. The safe.
Safe.
So they have one side they have Shubha and the other side Labha. Shubha means the auspicious and the other side profit. So when you do auspicious works, okay, there should be donation and there should be receiving. Without, there can only be receiving, you are not going to benefit. So you have to give to receive. And this is something so fundamental, we don't think of it in that way. If I go to a shop, I want a watch, but I have to give money. So if I give, I get.
Now, Mother made this very clear about Oroville.
Yes.
She said each person would come and they would give what they could give out of themselves.
That's right.
And they would receive what they needed.
Exactly.
So clear.
And this is something so, when you see even from the economics point of view, it is something so clear. Suppose I have a 1 rupee note with me. I don't want to part. I don't give it anywhere. It remains static. It doesn't produce wealth. But suppose I give that 1 rupee to a tea shop. I have given it to him, I get tea. There's an exchange. That fellow will buy with that 1 rupee tea leaves. So again it is doing, and that tea leaf wala will give it for his meal. So it will circulate 10 times. That 1 rupee has done the work of 10 rupees if it is circulated. So the circulation, you see, all the ideas are connected. So if you keep it static within yourself, be selfish, you are not going to benefit. But if it does that, it produces wealth. So that's why circulation is so important. Mother says the same thing. She says money is not to be hoarded. It is to be spent. It's got a power and it is sent in the right way. And she was not very much in favor of insurance and all these things. Okay, particularly insurance, she was not in favor at all.
Very true.
Even fixed deposits, she was not in favor of.
That's right.
Money is not meant to make money, she says.
But to serve the divine.
Yes. So all these ideas are connected with the sacrifice. Okay, so now we go a little more. For which sacrifice, as their companion says the Gita, the All-Father created these peoples. The acceptance of the law of sacrifice is a practical recognition by the ego that it is neither alone in the world nor chief in the world. There is a connection. You depend on everything else. Okay. I'll read one more, then we'll have a little more discussion. It is its admission that even in this much fragmented existence, there is beyond itself and behind that, which is not its own egoistic person, something greater and completer, a diviner all, which demands from it subordination and service. So there is a connectedness everywhere, and you have to, you know that there is something deeper. That's what he's saying. Practical recognition by the ego, neither alone in the world nor chief in the world. Now we can see from another angle this how it works. If I am in the physical world, I need my teacher, I need my tailor, I need my doctor. I can't be alone by myself. So there is always an interaction. Even in this way, there is an interaction. That interaction is the principle of the law of sacrifice. You have to give to receive. And that is something so, it operates even at the most practical, even at the lowest level. Okay? A little banal example, but the more phone calls you make, the more phone calls you will receive. It's a fact. It's at the lowest level, even that is true. Okay? So, then he also says that this connectedness, a diviner all which demands from it subordination and service. Indeed, sacrifice is imposed and where need be compelled by the universal world force. So there are people who are selfish, but it is forced on you. You have to depend. Suppose you fall ill, you have to go to a doctor and give him money. So you are compelled to interact with the physical world. And something, where is it gone? Sacrifice is imposed and where need be compelled by the universal world force. But you should not be compelled. You should be able to understand that selfishness is not going to benefit you in any way, and there should be a free giving of oneself. The more one gives oneself, the more one receives in a subtler way, not necessarily physical. My doctor used to tell me also, my urology doctor, okay, he used to tell me, I don't worry about money. I just do the right action and money comes by itself. And that's what mother also used to always say. I remember also when I was in the press, okay, we had to buy a new machine. But where is the money? Don't worry about the money. You do your action, you start, and the money you will see comes by itself. Something or other happens and things are arranged. If you have the right attitude, then the divine provides for everything. There is also a Sanskrit shloka which we referred to last time. I'll do that after I finish the para. Okay, so something greater and completer, a diviner all which demands from it subordination and service. Indeed, sacrifice is imposed and where need be compelled by the universal world force. It takes it even from those who do not consciously recognize the law, inevitably, because this is the intrinsic nature of things. Now we have seen also in the connectedness of nature, okay, the interaction between trees and birds. The birds eat the fruits, the birds are benefiting, and the bird eats the fruit and flies somewhere else, and in its droppings the seed falls and the tree is benefiting, it is getting multiplied. So there is a connection between the two. Even we see also between animals and birds, everything is connected. Even you see sometimes on elephants, sometimes on rhinoceroses, buffaloes, birds come and sit and eat the insects in the body. Both are benefiting. So there is this connectedness everywhere. But if it is done consciously, you benefit like anything.
There's an interesting story about the sandalwood, which is a parasitic tree. And the only way it can be propagated is that the civet cat eats its seeds and its droppings produce new plants.
That's right. That's exactly what we were discussing just now. The relation between the plants and the birds. And even the animals also. They go elsewhere and the droppings of seeds are propagated. I read the next one. For this is the truth in nature, that this ego, which thinks itself a separate independent being and claims to live for itself, is not and cannot be independent nor separate, nor can it live to itself even if it would, but rather all are linked together by a secret oneness. This link we don't see, but it is there. Okay? Each existence is continually giving out perforce from its stock, out of its mental receipts from nature, or its vital and physical assets and acquisitions and belongings. A stream goes to all that is around it. And always again it receives something from its environment, gratis or in return for its voluntary or involuntary tribute. We'll stop here because there is a beautiful image. It's the one that we spoke about in the economics. So this is an economics image he is using. Okay? So look at the words. Each existence is continually giving out perforce from its stock. The first word is stock. Any industry needs to have in its store stocks. If I am a printer, I need to stock paper. And I need to use that, draw it from the stock and use it. So the first word is stock. Out of its mental receipts from nature. The word receipt, you are receiving from nature. Okay? And or its vital physical assets. Again another word which refers you back to the economic image. And acquisitions. So when I acquire shares or I acquire properties, I am acquiring. I am giving out money and acquiring. Again the law of sacrifice is occurring. Okay? It's acquisitions and belongings. A stream goes out to all that is around it. Of course, he is talking of a subtle law. We'll talk of that. But he is using a very physical image. An image in economics. And always again it receives something from its environment gratis or in return for its voluntary or involuntary tribute. Tribute, another word that gives you the image of the economics. So you read Srimno carefully, he is using images all the time, which makes it very clear. There has to be an exchange, a give and take. This is the law of sacrifice. Okay? So, but what he is saying is something else. He is saying that you are constantly interacting with the physical world. Physically, vitally, mentally. There is a constant interaction. We don't think of it that way. But when I am eating food, I am taking in something which the universe is giving me. I depend on the universe. I can't live alone by myself. The universe has to feed me. So I am connected with the universe. But I am also interacting in my own way with the two lower organs of the body. I am also rejecting something into the universe. Even when I am breathing, I am taking in oxygen from the universe and I am breathing out carbon dioxide. There is an exchange. This happens also with trees. We know that. There is a constant interchange between the universe and the individual. Universe and individual, and even the individuals themselves also. There is an interchange. So the law of sacrifice is the absolute necessity of interchange. If there is no interchange, there will be no movement. And if there is no movement, there will be decay and death. So this is such an important principle that he's talking about. We have spent a good deal of time to go into detail, but you can understand what is the law of sacrifice. So this is what he's saying. For it is only by this giving and receiving that it can affect its own growth, while at the same time it helps the sum of things. You can grow only when you give yourself more fully. Okay, so. But it should not be a giving with the intention of receiving. Then it becomes commerce. It's not sacrifice anymore. Okay, that also happens. At length, though, at first, slowly and partially, we learn to make the conscious sacrifice. Even in the end, we take joy to give ourselves and what we envisage as belonging to us in a spirit of love and devotion to that which appears for the moment other than ourselves and is certainly other than our limited personalities. The sacrifice and the divine return for our sacrifice then become a gladly accepted means towards our last perfection. For it is recognized now as the road to the fulfillment in us of the eternal purpose. So what's the eternal purpose? The divinization of your own nature. The getting rid of the limitations and going back to where you came from. Okay? I was telling you about the, in a very simple way, but this connectedness is there everywhere. Okay? It says in Sanskrit, I'll tell you only the English. The rivers flow not for their own benefit. They are not selfish. The rivers are flowing and supplying water to the earth and to plants and to human beings for the benefit of others, not for itself. The trees are fruiting not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of others. Okay? Unselfishness, the principle of unselfishness. The cow is giving milk, it doesn't drink its own milk. It's for the others. So, the last line says, therefore, your body, your being should also be for the upakara, for the benefit of others. You must use your being for universal benefit, not for yourself. That's the law of sacrifice.
Give us in Sanskrit.
Oh. Paropakaraya phalanti vriksha, paropakaraya vahanti nadya, paropakaraya duhanti gava. Idam shariram. Okay? Paropakarartham idam shariram. This body is also for the benefit of others. So this is what the law of sacrifice is. And if you are not doing it consciously, it will be imposed on you. I cannot go to a shop and take a watch without giving money. It's as simple as that.
Now a question on this giving of the body. Why were some of the disciples buried and others cremated?
Oh. The cremation is normally the recognition that your body is not the ultimate truth, the soul. So it is buried. But when a yogi attains realization, even his mind is transformed, his vital is transformed, even his body becomes holy. You can't destroy it. It is something holy. It's very valuable, so you have to preserve it. That's the reason. But most often, the sacrifice is done unconsciously, egoistically, and without knowledge or acceptance of the true meaning of the great world right. It is so that the vast majority of earth creatures do it. And when it is so done, the individual derives only a mechanical minimum of natural inevitable profit. Inevitable. Achieves by it only a slow, painful progress, limited and tortured by the smallness and suffering of the ego. Only when the heart, the will, and the mind of knowledge associate themselves with the law and gladly follow it, can there come the deep joy and the happy fruitfulness of divine sacrifice. The mind's knowledge of the law and the heart's gladness in it culminate in the perception that it is to our own self and spirit and the one self and spirit of all that we give. It is, and this is true even when our self-offering is still to our fellow creatures or to lesser powers and principles, and not yet to the Supreme. Not for the sake of the wife, says Yajnavalkya in the Upanishad, but for the sake of the self is the wife dear to us. This, in the lower sense of the individual self, is the hard fact behind the colored and passionate professions of egoistic love. But in a higher sense, it is the inner significance of that love too, which is not egoistic but divine. All true love and all sacrifice are in their essence nature's contradiction of the primary egoism and its separative error. It is her attempt to turn from a necessary first fragmentation towards a recovered oneness. All unity between creatures is in its essence a self-finding, a fusion with that from which we have separated, a discovery of one's own self in others, which comes with the cosmic consciousness. So, this quotation from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is very, very interesting. Not for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of the self is the wife dear to us. Two meanings. When you love some human being, there is always an expectation. The love is satisfying you more than the other person. It's an egoistic love. There is always an expectation of return. So your love, apparently you are giving yourself, but you also want a return. So it is for selfishness that you are doing it at the lower level. But at the higher level, you are giving to her who is yourself, because you are in a cosmic consciousness. So that's a higher meaning. So this quotation from the Upanishad has two meanings. It's true at the lower level, it's true at the higher level. Isn't it? The human love is more about you than the other. So that's what he's saying. But most often, the sacrifice is done unconsciously, egoistically, and without knowledge or acceptance of the true meaning of the great world right. The great world right is the sacrifice of the divine. Okay? He has sacrificed himself, and there is a constant interchange. The word right is clear, na? It's a ceremony where you are, yeah. So, so the world right is the law of sacrifice which is operative in the physical world, the connectedness. But very often we do that unconsciously. It's again, we come back to that very ordinary thing that if I want to buy something, I have to give money and get. But I don't think of it as it's done egoistically. I have to give, so I am giving. Mechanically, and you derive least benefit from it. That's what Srimad is saying. Without knowledge or acceptance of the true meaning of the great world right. It is so. It is like this. Srimad uses the word so in this manner. So can have so many meanings, okay? But he always uses the word so in this manner, in this way, thus, okay? It is like this that the vast majority of earth creatures do it. They are compelled to do it, so they do it. When it is so done, the individual derives only a mechanical minimum of natural inevitable profit, achieves by it only a slow, painful progress, limited and tortured by the smallness and suffering of the ego. When you do it mechanically and unwillingly, you don't benefit. That's what is being said. Only when the heart, the will, and the mind of knowledge associate themselves with the law and gladly follow it, can there come the deep joy and the happy fruitfulness of divine sacrifice. What he's saying is very interesting, because some of the rich people in the world, they donate also a lot. But is it being done in the right spirit, or is it being done selfish way? That also you have to see. Because when you are making a donation, it becomes tax free. So you are doing it for your own benefit. So all donations and all charity is not necessarily the right way of doing it. Because all philanthropy and charity, you are satisfying yourself. It's an egoistic action.
Sri Aurobindo has a lot to say about it.
Yes. He repeats that everywhere.
Yes.
That philanthropy and charity is mostly egoistic. Okay? But it can also be done in the correct spirit. The true sacrifice would be when you have very little, but you give all of it. I'll give you one very interesting example of a very poor person who had nothing to offer to mother, but it was an old lady, and she offered some molasses. In India we call it good, the brown sugar if you want, okay, molasses. And mother received it, and she kept it on her where she used to keep other things, and every day she would take a little bit and taste it. After 5 or 6 days, Jivan Bhai, who used to see to her food, told her, mother, it's 5 days old, 6 days old, it's becoming it's becoming rotten. Why are you taking that? Mother said that, do you think I am tasting that for the good itself? I am enjoying the devotion with which it was given to me. So that is the true spirit in which it should be done. Then the divine grace comes back to you, double-fold, twofold. So when you do it in an egoistic manner, there is no profit. That's what is being said. A slow process. Only when the heart, the will, and the mind of knowledge associate themselves with the law and gladly follow it, can there come the deep joy and the happy fruitfulness of divine sacrifice. The mind's knowledge of the law and the heart's gladness in it culminate in the perception that it is to our own self and spirit and the one self and spirit of all that we give. We are not giving to anybody else, we are giving to ourselves when we give to others. Because we are all connected and we are all one. Okay. And this is true even when our self-offering is still to our fellow creatures or to lesser powers and principles, and not yet to the Supreme. And then he gives that quotation from the Upanishad. Not for the sake of the wife, says Yajnavalkya in the Upanishad, but for the sake of the self is the wife dear to us. This, in the lower sense of the individual self, is the hard fact beyond the colored and passionate professions of egoistic love. When it's egoistic love, it is done for yourself and not for the others. Human nature, its love is mostly egoistic. There can be, we have a word which says altruistic love. Okay? Ideally, maybe there is much more of giving than receiving. Yet there is always a slight expectation of return.
Could I just go back for a moment and ask about lesser powers and principles?
Yeah. Lesser powers and principles. When I go to a temple, I go to I go to Tirupati and I put 1,000 rupees in the hundi. Hundi is the safe that is there. Am I doing it as really an offering? I am giving you 1,000 rupees. Please ensure that I get 1 million back. It's a commerce with the divine. Okay, I'll tell you an interesting story. When I was in the press, we had to buy a machine. And the sales manager of that company came to us to persuade us that we should buy that machine. So, to impress me, he brought out the blessings packet from his pocket and said, "Look, I am mother's devotee."
Oh.
And he put it back into his pocket. So, and he told me, you know, to convince me more that he is a devotee, he says, whenever I am in difficulty, I send 100 rupees to the ashram and my difficulty gets solved. So this is what we do when we go to temples. Oh. So I asked him, and what happens if your difficulty is not solved? It can happen. So he said, I sent another 100 rupees. So this is donation and giving in the wrong way. So that's what he means by principles and powers. When you are giving to Ganesh with the hope that Ganesh, ensure that I get something more. Okay. So this is and principles and powers. Sometimes you are sacrificing to vital gods. Okay. That's what he means by principles and powers.
Thank you.
It can be lesser gods. But the real is to the divine who is the highest. This in the lower sense. So lower sense and higher sense we have seen of that quotation from the Upanishad. Very interesting. It's true both ways. All true love and all sacrifice are in their essence nature's contradiction of the primary egoism and its separative error. He has told us earlier that when the divine is creating the many, he is ensuring that they are connected so that the egoism doesn't become rampant. It is limited. So, your egoism is constantly being checked by the connection with the others.
But it's a beautiful sentence. All true love.
Yes.
And all sacrifice.
In their essence, nature's contradiction of the primary egoism and its separative error. It is her attempt to turn from a necessity, first fragmentation, towards a recovered oneness. The fragmentation is the many in the physical world, and we do believe that we are separate. But you are not separate. As I said, you need your doctor, you need your tailor, you need your servant. So you depend on the universe. You depend on your food for the universe, and you depend on your other things also for the universe. The universe and you are connected. But earlier he has spoken also of a constant interchange between. So this is also something that we are not conscious of. At the physical level, very obvious. I am taking in food. The universe is providing me food. But the universe is also providing you emotions. Things are coming in from the outer world into your vital, and you are also contributing your emotions to the... There is a constant interchange. There is a constant interchange at the mind level also. Your thoughts are coming from outside, and you are also sending out, broadcasting your own thoughts to the world.
Wasn't it Swami Vivekananda who said, beware of thoughts?
Yes. You must be very careful. You must put a watchman, he says, at the doors of your mind and make sure that the right thoughts are coming in. Don't allow the wrong thoughts to come in. So, that's it.
Last sentence.
All unity between creatures is in its essence a self-finding, a fusion with that from which we have separated, a discovery of oneself in others. We have come from the divine who is one, and we now feel that I am separated from him. But the more you apply the law of sacrifice, the more you realize your oneness with others, and finally oneness with the divine. That's the supreme discovery.
Thank you, Ron. Namaste all. and welcome to our continuing series on Friday, Essays on the Gita, and on Saturday, Savitri.